Good afternoon. Thank you for attending Vocation and Employment session. My name is Debbie Merrigan and I'm the Head of Employment and Post-18s Transitions with As I Am. I have the pleasure in sharing this session with four exciting colleagues here. So I will hand over to Tracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll stand over here out of the way. I noticed lots of people taking photographs of slides earlier and, clicker. And there's two screens there as well, which you can take photos from if that's helpful to you. Okay, just to introduce myself, I'm Dr. Tracy Turner. I'm a senior lecturer at Hertfordshire Business School, the University of Hertfordshire. I teach strategic management and employability. And I'm going to be talking today about my research into the work-life experiences of UK autistic women. So just in terms of my kind of positionality, my son was diagnosed with autism as a teenager, and then, surprise, I realised I was autistic, and I received my diagnosis just before my 50th birthday. My own career has been, like many of the women that I've researched, kind of a different kind of journey. So I've had a career in the trade union movement, in local government, and now in higher education. My son still has challenges with employment, so he's actually still currently unemployed, having been bullied out of a job with a disability confident employer. So, okay, the aims of my research was to look at what jobs autistic women did, how autistic women resolved their identity in the workplace, and what challenges did they face. And the background, of course, is that we now know that girls and women can be autistic. It's not a male thing. A lot of women have been missed because of their ability to mask and camouflage. Many of the older women in my research, of course, would have been children in the 60s or 70s, and so therefore would have missed having a diagnosis early. Access to a diagnosis. Access to a diagnosis remains problematic in the UK. And of course, the statistics tell us that there are very low numbers of autistic people in employment. But of course, they are diagnosed people who are disclosing. So actually, there are lots of autistic people probably in the workplace, but they just don't disclose. So this was a qualitative study. I carried out semi-structured interviews using oral history interview kind of methodology. And that was chosen really because I wanted to explore their experiences. I didn't want to sort of predetermine anything. Recruitment was through the National Autistic Society and social media. My recruitment questionnaire generated 153 initial participants, and out of those I did in-depth interviews with 35 women, and those were carried out either in person or online or through email questions. And these were the sort of jobs that autistic women were doing, which are not necessarily stereotypical jobs that people think they might be doing. I had a TV producer, freelance journalist, police sergeant, office manager. Yes, there were people doing bar and retail work, etc., but a really broad range of different jobs that they were doing, piano teacher, etc. So one of my themes was about chaos or control, sort of autistic women in the workplace. So I asked them what their ideal job would be, and a lot of them talked about creative, flexible sort of occupations, maybe being a sole worker or working in a small workplace. And a lot of them talked about maybe wanting to research something and having a connection with some kind of social justice. When I asked them about what their original ambition had been, For a lot of the older women, they felt that their original ambition had been really unrealistic, and that had been really shaped by their lack of social self-awareness at the time. And their perception of their career was quite mixed as well. So, you know, their lack of self-knowledge really had led to this kind of fragmentary working life, but actually at the same time, they were also very pleased about the successes that they had achieved now that they knew that they'd done that whilst being autistic. The younger women that I had in my research, they were very frustrated with their career, and they were sort of now reframing what they did or trying to get into different occupations. Another theme really flagged up the issues around identity, anxiety, and stigma. So obviously, the diagnosis was a really important step in resolving identity, but there were very mixed views about whether having received an early diagnosis would have opened up different opportunities or whether it would have closed them down because of stigmatization. Many of the women hadn't disclosed in the workplace, and because of that, they were using others, perhaps comorbid conditions, in order to achieve sort of adjustments. So they would talk about environmental sensitivities, or, you know, I don't like bright lights, I find noise very disturbing, etc. A lot of them were having trouble with masking, so they talked about the performance that they were having to put in to mask their personality, to do the job, you know, performing a role, and the absolute exhaustion that was causing them. In terms of recruitment practices, some women could perform really well, so it was a whole performance, literally. They could go in and absolutely ace the interview, and others really struggled with it, and they couldn't, they found it really difficult. It was very anxious. Some of the women, of course, had reached a stage in their career where they were now working as independent consultants or interims, and so they were then able to use the sort of mechanism where they would, a recruitment agency would place them in a position. And so, you know, they really benefited from that because they wouldn't have to go through an interview process. They were known to be reliable, good employees, and so they would get placed. Self-employment was not a panacea because a lot of women then struggled with the business side of running the business. So, okay, they could do what, you know, their speciality was, but then they had this added burden of the business side of it to do. Stigma was a big thing. The women were very aware of people's perceptions of them, and those views, I've gotten lots of lovely quotes that I haven't got time to give you, but those views are often really cruel and stigmatizing. So the other aspect was the impact of double empathy, the work environment and organization. So it feels to me that a lot of the challenges in the workplace were driven by breakdown in communication or understanding between the autistic woman and their non-autistic colleagues. So it wasn't so much the working environment, it was the people that they were working with that was often the trigger that caused problems. So their anxiety was often driven by an intolerance of uncertainty. And things like unstructured work socializing was therefore very stressful. Again, lots of women, as others have said, were perhaps not stretched enough, or what they were doing was a kind of poor fit with their values. And there was a lot of evidence of burnout through not only doing the job, but having to actually adopt a different persona to do it. There was actually very little, very patchy use of reasonable adjustments, and I was really surprised at that. Coming from a trade union background, I was amazed really at what little there was, but that seemed to be due to real little understanding by employers on what to offer and where to get advice. Plus, of course, if the women didn't disclose, then they didn't get the adjustments. So it was a lot of the participants had a difficult relationship in terms of perfectionism as well, and that caused a lot of stress. So, conclusions. So there's a clear evidence of autistic women carrying out a wide range of jobs going beyond what I think are stereotypical assumptions of what they might do for employment. There's a chaotic pattern of employment caused by critical incidents, perhaps not feeling a good fit or being stigmatized. Early diagnosis may close off career routes due to stereotypical views about what autistic employment ought to be. The diagnosis really was essential to women resolving their identity, and it became then a gateway to kind of workplace support and adjustments. The diversity of views really is consistent with this idea of the individual experience and requirements, and I think autistic people need to be seen as individual and not as some kind of group identity, which I feel that neurotypical people tend to try and put autistic people in. Oh, I'll go on this course and learn how to deal with autistic people. Working environments, of course, for autistic people are determined by non-autistic culture and practice, and this is an issue. So I think greater understanding of autistic and non-autistic work practices is required, this double empathy thing, really to understand the emotional labour, the perfectionism, and to reduce the stigma. So I now want to kind of look at a bit more at autistic self-employment and small business if I can. This is me, this is how you can contact me. I'd love to have a chat with anyone. I'd love to explore if you've got any funding for doing some more research. Okay.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, just over there.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. I have a question about the results. Do you think that, I don't know exactly what are the results in common, but are these results specifically for women? Are there any particularities, the struggles, what are the challenges for women in employment, or do you think that are the same difficulties for men also, or this is the particularities for women also, only?
Honestly, I don't know whether there might be a difference. I think that's probably another study. For this, I particularly wanted to look at women because that's a gap in the literature. And of course, I'm a woman, so I would be interested in women. They may be different, yes, I don't know.
But it was very interesting because there are no studies, only women, so it's very, very interesting what you did. Thank you.
Are there any more questions for Tracy? There we go.
Thanks for a great talk. I just wondered, the type of jobs you mentioned, it's very diverse, and we did a large study in the Netherlands where we find that a lot of autistic people, men and women, but in particular women, have a preference for social jobs more than the general population. And I was just wondered if you have any ideas on that particular affinity with social jobs in autistic people.
What do you mean exactly by social jobs?
Healthcare jobs, social workers. We have different ways of categorizing them, but in general, those types of jobs. Yeah.
Yes, there were a lot of women employed in the kind of healthcare, empathetic kind of professions, and again, I think perhaps that's not something that traditionally people would associate with, this idea that, they think that autistic people lack empathy, etc., etc. In fact, it's quite the opposite, probably. So there was evidence of that, definitely, yeah.
Why would they prefer those kinds of jobs?
Why would they prefer those? I think because they do have empathy and they care deeply, this idea about social justice. So I think what came through for me was that autistic people have very clear values about things. Mm-hmm. They care very deeply about certain things, and they want to support people and do things for people that do that.
So autism could be a talent for a social job, which is completely against what you read about autism.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, sorry. Autism could be a talent for doing social jobs, which is a completely different perspective. And I'll talk to you more about it later, maybe. Yeah. It's interesting, thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Tracy. We'll now move on to Anne-Marie. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anne-Marie McDonnell, and I'm the Head of Programme and Service Design in National Learning Network. And today I'm here to tell you a story about National Learning Network and Mr. Price and our industry partnership in facilitating autistic students to move into jobs and careers. My co-author is Adele McSorley. She's the Director of Operations with Mr. Price. So before I get into it, I need to tell you a little bit about both organisations to give you a little bit of context. So National Learning Network, we're the education and training division of the Rehab Group. And Rehab Group, we just celebrated our 75th anniversary last year, so a very special time in our history. Within Rehab Group, we have an education and training division, a health and social care division, and an enterprise and an employability and social enterprise division. But today we're going to talk a little bit about National Learning Network. We have about 34 locations all across Ireland. They're our main locations, and then we have hubs and satellites. So wherever you are in Ireland, we hope that you're fairly close to a National Learning Network centre. We have over 40 accredited training programmes that support people into jobs and careers, and they range from areas like business and IT to sports and arts to computer programming, game design, and that's just a sample of what's available. All the courses are designed, though, to support people to progress into further education and higher education, and they're relevant to the needs of that local labour market as well. Approximately 40% of the student body in National Learning Network is autistic students or neurodivergent students. A few other things that make us a little bit different maybe than some mainstream provision is our class sizes. We have small classes of about 12 students to every one tutor. We have personalised planning services and comprehensive student supports that include psychological support services to help manage health and well-being. And there's continuous intake, so people don't need to wait for the start of a term or the start of a year. We meet people at all stages during the year so that people can start when they're ready. But to just contextualise a little bit more for our talk today, what I'm saying is we've so many talented students in National Learning Network across the country, and we need to meet more and more inclusive employers so that these talented individuals have a chance to shine and thrive in their careers. One such employer is Mr. Price. They're a leading discount retailer and they've over 70 stores around the country. So it's wonderful that their footprint matches with ours. They're wholly committed to inclusive employment and they're an authentic partner. They have a rights-based approach to employment. This is not for a charitable lens that they're doing this. They have a business need and they recognise that we have many, many talented students who can be future talented employees within their company. Over the last 5 years, we've supported over 300 students to move into jobs and careers with this company. And while they're a retail store, it's not just retail jobs. We've supported people to move into jobs in their head office, including in their IT department, where one of our students is their first intern in the IT department, and into the accounts department, warehouse, logistics, so a huge variety. So it's that match. We have talented students, they have a need to meet talented employees, and that's what makes it work. So when we look at the critical success factors, when we started this partnership, I suppose formally we started about 5 years ago, but we've been working in small pockets all around the country, and that's when we realised that we've got a really natural partnership here and there's lots of synergies. One of the things that Adele, who you'll see later on in it, is she said that we really need you to support us in bringing things from theory into practice. Like, tell me what these things look like on my shop floor. Tell me what this looks like in an office environment. So when we talk about the critical success factors, we have a strengths-based approach to skill development together. There's neuroaffirmative recruitment practices. We consider universal design in our processes and practices. And we need to learn, listen, learn, and continue to evolve. And we have a community of practice that supports that between the education and between the industry partner. So echoing back to what the business told us as an education provider, we want you to help us understand what this looks like on the ground. So in a strengths-based approach, this is Stephen Brosnan. He is the Disability, Equality and Inclusion Officer in Mr. Price. For National Learning Network, he is our go-to person, and he supports us in planning work experience placements and transition to employment. And no matter how busy he is, a conversation starts with, how can I help? Which just frames it nicely for moving into strengths-based conversations. So the first thing we're asked, or our student is asked, is, what are you interested in learning? That's the start. The next thing is there any strengths that you'd like to build on when you're with us? And then that also leads into, have you any particular interests? And sometimes our students are asked about interests because they're trying to find maybe somebody on the shop floor or in the office that has similar interest and might be the best match for a peer. So this is what I mean about the business was saying to us, we need to bring it down into something very simple that we can make work on the ground. So the next thing is neuroaffirmative practices. We agreed that as two companies together that we plan for success. We want this to be successful for individual students, but also for staff, for mentors, and for the businesses. We want it to be successful. So there's really practical things that are asked. Every student is asked, is there a particular story you'd like? Perhaps it's on a bus route that you're familiar with, or perhaps it's in an area that you know very well. Is there days or times of the week that you want to work? Is there anything we need to consider in the environment? Is there things that you typically would avoid? Is there typically things that you would seek out? And also, is there any accommodations that you'd like us to consider? Is there anything that you're bringing with you? So again, it's very, very practical, and the language that's used as well, working with our students, is very simple. All jargon is avoided so that people can communicate what their needs are and what their strengths are in a way that suits them. The next person I'm going to introduce you to when I'm trying to bridge from work experience into employment, and DJ Kelleher is an ex-student of ours who broke the mold on inclusive recruitment practices and what the norm might be. DJ is an amazing writer. He's a creative writer. He's also a poet and most recently a published author as well, with support from Mr. Price, where he's now employed. So when DJ was doing his employer-based training program with ourselves, he was able to share things that he was interested in relation to writing, and his team and the management were all really interested in this as well. And when it came to the time where he'd finished his training time, he wanted to apply for a job. But a CV wasn't just going to cut it for DJ. And what he decided he'd do is write a poem for the position. And that wasn't even enough for him. He went straight to the top. He went to the director of operations and he submitted a poem, and that's how he applied for a job, which talked about what it would mean to him to have the job, what strengths he would bring to the job, and the impact it would have on his life. So needless to say, he got the job straight away. He got his contract straight away. But what happened after that as well is it brought all of us together again to reflect on why does it have to be a CV and the rigidity that we have in our recruitment practices. I think a lot of us that are here today will recognize that sometimes it's not the job that's the barrier, it's the applying for a job, it's the doing the interview, it's those bits that can be very, very off-putting to start with. If you got in the door, the job wouldn't be an issue, but it's getting through that door. So DJ, change maker, there's so many other valued roles he has, but he's been a real change maker. And when I say he went straight to the top, he went to Edel, who is the director of operations in the Mr. Price, the company that we're talking about here. And she actually framed the poem to remind herself about, it's in her office over her desk, it's kind of to remind her every day that there's always kind of bits that we can change or things that we can do. We don't have to be so rigid in our thoughts about recruiting people. So now in Mr. Price, if you wish, one of our students, if they wish to apply for jobs, there's lots of ways you can do it. If you still want to give a CV, give a CV. If they have a simple application form, it's in plain English, you can do that. You want to drop an email and tell people why you want the job, that's also fine. Others of our students have drawn or created digitally what they wanted to show as their skills. And one of the most common ones we have is after our students complete a work experience placement, they just simply have a discussion with their workplace supervisor or the hiring manager and talk to them about where they think they would fit, how they would best fit, and if that's something that works from both sides. Sometimes our staff from National Network are involved in those conversations, and sometimes they're not. They're very informal, and that works well. And Edel, who's not here today, said to also just say there could be things that she hasn't heard of or that hasn't been done yet, but she's open to them. If there's other ways to let her know that there's talented individuals out there, we're to let them know. The last thing is we're very, very proud of those employment outcomes. We're very proud that it's working well for people, that they're not just getting jobs, that they're getting careers, and we've seen some of our students move into management roles. But we suppose we want to be forward planning and solution focused and look at innovation. So in 2024, we brought a challenge to Mr. Price to say that while some of our students are seeing more and more people progress to employment, we were meeting young autistic students who had an intellectual disability, who were even finding the jump from our training centre into a work experience placement a little daunting. And we thought about things we could do, like some of our ex-students coming back and talking about, you know, how easy it is to, you know, go in on your first day. We thought about a little bit more shorter job sampling, you know, job shadowing, all those ideas. And then we meet every month, so we went away and we had a thought. But when we came back, the Mr. Price team had another idea. They asked us, do any of these locations that you're talking about have a space that we could also consider putting a simulated work environment in it? So that's exactly what happened. We turned up a few days later, a van turned up, and we now have a simulated retail environment. That's in one of our campuses here in Dublin, in Park House, where we have some visitors going on Monday from here, and our students just love it. It has been that real work environment, just that confidence building that they needed as well, and has supported so many more people who needed that little bit of extra skills development training in moving on. So that is what, you know, it looks like in practice from an education provider working with one employer. I suppose it's the important bit is it's like listening to the employer about how can you bring the theory into practice with us and make it something that we can use on a day-to-day basis, that it can come into our language, it can come into our processes. And yeah, I suppose that's where I'm going to end for now, and thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. Does anybody have questions? Have you got any hands? There we have a hand there. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. This was super interesting. I was wondering if you guys had supported any folks using AACs into this program, and what that was like, particularly like training non-autistic staff members to, you know, accept non-normative forms of communication and that sort of thing.
Yes, so some people we haven't, some people we have supported. We have some of our students don't use their voice to communicate. We're very, very fortunate. We have a wonderful relationship with As I Am as well. And we work with external partners as well who support not just us as education practitioners, they also support the employer and also support the person and the family. So sometimes it is an AAC device that we might be using, and we'll lean in with As I Am on that and learn together. But we've also, like, other communication techniques that we've used. For some of our students, it's simply like speech assistant, maybe on their phone, and maybe it's not that they don't use their voice to communicate, but sometimes if they become overwhelmed, they just like to have something else to rely on. Our students have been, they've been given free rein to use whatever accommodations, whenever and wherever they want. There's small little whiteboards, different places in different stores that people know where they are if they needed to do it. So, yeah, the answer is yes, but more than just AAC, communication in a much wider sense.
Are there any more questions from Ray? Just over there. Does anybody have a hand?
Hi there. Oh, that's very loud. My name is Clodagh. I'm from Dublin, and I'm a family member, so I just wanted to say thank you for the work that you're doing. This is kind of a specific question. One of the barriers that we faced in my family, I have a person who is very dear to me. They're 30, and they have struggled to access services because they left school before the school leavers kind of initiative was brought in. I was just wondering, is this service something which is, do you have to go through that school leavers funding to access it, or is it open in a broader sense?
No, specifically in relation to National Learning Network, and my email is there as well, I can connect with you, but there is some of our services which are specific if you've come through that. The majority of people who have moved into employment through this space, not the majority, a large number have come through our Education and Training Board funded programs as well, which doesn't rule out people who haven't been involved in the school leaver process. So I can catch up with you after this, and you have an email as well. So we'll talk to you.
An amazing presentation, and the energy is palpable. Thank you. A question, I don't know if it's maybe too much detail, but once the student and the individual finds a job, do you know how long the student, the individual, manages to stay within the job?
One of the gaps that I just was talking to Lars about before I came on stage is to say, and our CEO is here today, we were just talking about we need to do more research ourselves on this, because anecdotally we have a lot of information because we're still going into stores and we're meeting our students, like DJ who's there is 3 years there, but we've students who are there a long time. And it would be really interesting, and it's an area for improvement for ourselves, because what else is interesting is our students are not just staying in the roles that they came into. They're moving, sometimes it's a horizontal move, sometimes it's a vertical move. So for us, I suppose, I'm here today, and I know there's a lot of academics, a lot of studies, but I suppose it's the practitioner lens. We kind of have looked at it and how to practically make this happen, and we kind of, the front step we haven't done as much on, but we need to do more on that. But anecdotally, yes, people are staying in jobs, moving across or moving up, but we'd love to be at another conference to share that.
Good job, keep the energy high.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Robert, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah. Speaking of energy, so yeah, my name is Rob Sheridan. I'm from Gheel Autism Services, and thanks for coming today, and thanks for listening to me. So participatory was a word that was just in my head all day today, and I just kept saying it and saying it and saying it and saying it because I found it very difficult to say. So I was out there around lunchtime just kind of saying it over and over again. But that was terrifying me today, not this talk, that actual word, because I fluff it up. And I was thinking today, how do I engage everybody today? I've been listening to other people speaking, and I found everything very interesting, but I don't want people getting hangry on me today. I don't want people walking out of the room. I want to engage with you, and I want to figure out what drives us as human beings. So I'm going to do a participatory research with you now. You're going to open this for me. You're going to engage. How many people in this room feel valued in their community and want to feel valued in the community? Just put your hands up. Is that 100%? Possibly? Okay. So how many people in this room want to have a purpose in life? Okay, cool. So this isn't just an autistic story. This is a human story. And that's where we level the playing field. So we developed this program in Gheel called the Impact Program. I actually don't have my clicker, so I'm going to do that now. I was thinking about using my mind for this, but it doesn't work. You know, so it's like, why are the slides not working? Okay, so it's called Future Expectations. It was a study that we did, a participatory story that we were doing, to figure out where we positioned as an organization, where the people that we serve are positioned in terms of what they value, what's their purpose, what do people want? And employment is a big central point to all of that. So it was a qualitative exploration of perceptions and the expectations of autistic adults regarding the Impact Program. Now, Impact, what does this stand for? It stands for Inspiring Meaningful Progressive Autistic Career Program Support. It's got 3 pillars to it. One is a whole approach to career planning, the holistic side of it. What does it take to, you leave college or you leave school and you kind of go, where do I go from here? I've got the education, but how do I get there? What is my purpose? What are my values? What does that look like to me? How many people have changed their career in this room? Put your hands up. Okay. Is that because you stepped into the room and it wasn't something you valued? It didn't really kind of speak to you? But that's what we want to do. We want to figure out, what do people want? You know, what can people learn about themselves? How can they grow as professionals and figure out what do they value? I was a food scientist. Now I work in social care for 20 years. I can thank my mum for that. She was a special needs assistant. I saw her coming home every day feeling happy and feeling value and purpose in her life. So if you're going to walk away today, out of everything that we've spoken about today, they're the two things that you need to remember. Value and purpose, that's what's important. Individualized approach to support was another pillar. We talk about the holistic approach to, you know, autism supports, accommodations, and all these fancy words and stuff. But when it comes down to retaining people in employment and keeping people happy from an organizational cultural point of view, from a psychological point of view, to retain people in employment, it's about figuring out, what do you need every single day from us? How can we help and shape you? How can we create a culture that's flexible and adaptable? And then we look at employer engagement and support from a consultancy perspective. Employers are living beings. They're made up of behaviors. They're made up of decision makers. They're made up of personalities. That's 80% of an organization. That's the hidden curriculum of an organization. It's hard to navigate that. So we wanted to look at that and engage with employers within that respect. So the key areas of the client focus, the person that we're working for, what stemmed out of that was looking at career preparation principles and stages of career planning. How do I systematically plan that for myself? Where are my weaknesses? Where are my strengths in that? How can we join the dots? Workplace expectations and culture, really important. The hidden curriculum of work. Anybody can do a job. But can you motivate somebody to do a job? Can you motivate somebody to come in every single day and feel valued in their job and welcomed in their job, to be part of that culture? That 80% of the iceberg that you don't see. It's very difficult for autistic people to navigate that world. Research and application of research. How do I find the right job that speaks to me? What are the values that speak to me? You can have 2 organizations that do the same product but do it very differently. McDonnell's, militant culture. Burger King, innovative culture. We talked about socialization. You brought it up. People want to work in social care. That's a people job. Autistic people want to be sociable. They want to be recognized. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves. Their own aspirations, what they can bring to the table. It's not just the typical autistic person. Everyone's different. Applying for a job and strategies. How best do I apply for a job? How do I sift through all the job specifications and figure out what are the key words? What does the culture say about the organization, the words that are identified in the job specification? Health and welfare at work. How do I deal with anxiety in my job? Who do I go to? Entrepreneurship. Do I want to be an entrepreneur? Apprenticeships. Practical learning. That's something that we're not looking at in this country properly. Socialization, as I mentioned, stress and anxiety management, that is massive. If the culture fit isn't there to support somebody in their job, how are they going to maintain their job? How are they going to bring the best version of themselves in a job? We see in schools that there's a huge dropout rate of autistic individuals from anxiety, not feeling part of something bigger than themselves. Communication strategies, massive. How do I communicate? I know somebody that we consulted with in an organization, and she's very sociable on the surface, but she came up to me after a presentation to say, I fear emailing anybody in the job because I can't express my tone, and it scares me. That person would rather get on the phone to somebody or write a little post-it note, but the email aspect of it, found it very difficult. The executive functioning, support and innovative practice. So we look at that person and say, okay, what do you need from an executive function point of view? How can we support you? Yes, we talk about strengths-based, but we also have to look at the weaknesses. Where are the gaps that we need to fill to support you with that? How do we build autism acceptance and awareness? That's very important. Equity versus equality. There's so many organizations out there saying, oh, we're the best and we're equal, but in practice, they're not equitable. It's the equity that keeps the person in the job. Equity for me is wearing these glasses. I can't do my job up here if I can't see you, if I can't see that. Looking at succession planning. That person wants to aspire to be better. I spoke to somebody recently who we spoke to who is now working in HR that wants to become a HR manager. They can see a pathway for themselves. Looking at reviews and support, reduction, building resilience and practice over time. Resilience is very important. Building up a rapport relationship with the organization in terms of looking at, this is the customer journey, this is the employee journey. Recruitment stage, recognize what are the barriers for that person and the organization. What are the general ones and what are the specific individualized ones? How do we create that balance between equity and equality? How do we make you an actual culture where you don't have to signpost autism supports anymore? It's just there. Practice supports, observation, monitoring. We work with the individual through evidence base. We're trying to do ourselves out of a job to support that person and the employer along the journey. Looking at the DEI supports, engaging with them, engaging in HR. HR are the culture guardians of an organization. Buddy systems. As the person grows in the organization, who can they speak to when they're transitioning into a role? Who is that person? Can we create an environment where autistic people in an organization become a voice for that and translate and educate and become internal consultants for the organization? Can we do that internally from the inside out? Change management, massive. Every single day, every single challenge you have in your life is change management. Transitioning, that's change. How do we effectively support somebody in an organization that's constantly changing? Do we tell them first? Do we make them part of the process? Do we make them as a consultant in the organization? On how best to create that change. And constantly review, review, review. Key findings in the study: increased confidence and workplace understanding of the impact program, which is a holistic course over 7 weeks that becomes an individualized consultation process through their journey into work. Participants gain greater confidence and insights into workplace dynamics, empowering a sort of job pursuit. They now know that's an organization I want to work for. Why? Not because it's near me, not because it looks fancy, because it aligns with my goals, my value, who I want to be, who I want to be part of. Peer support and mentorship. The people that are within our service using the service are helping each other. They're advocating for each other. They found their tribe. Peer support and mentorship boosted motivation and engagement, fostering community and a sense of belonging, like I mentioned there. Tailored person-centered supports, really, really key. What works for me? What's tailored towards for me? Looking at individualized coaching to create flexible learning environments. So what we are changing at the moment is looking at how we can continue to be stronger in practice as leaders in support with the consultation of our clients. Role and clarification support. There are so many different aspects to what we do. It's really important for the people that we serve that they know what that person is so they can go to the right person at the right time. Making sure that our employer and participant engagement is done in a face-to-face session. Ensuring that participants provide real-world insights into inspiring trainees. Looking at role-playing for confidence. Looking at a person's CV and using that as a framework to engage through conversation, through that psychological barrier when you're sitting in front of somebody doing an interview. Interviews are horrible. But how can we skill somebody up to a point where it's like, I feel confident enough to do an interview or to speak? Or are there other ways we can interview and capture somebody's skill sets? Broadening career options. What can I do? Can I work in the trades? Apprenticeship? Practical learning? Does that suit me? Does it align to my values? Do I have an idea that I can work from? Providing practical information, individualized support, job support, search and supports, looking at needs analysis and evaluation continually. I've got 22 seconds. Transition planning, that's really important. That's why we're here today. We're looking at that. Clear communication materials for the individuals with visual. Defined roles for staff, again, so the guys know who the best person to speak to. And looking at practical experience opportunities. This is the most important slide of the lot. 97% referrals, 88% impact completion, 60% are now employed, 27% are in career-focused education, and 87% have achieved their initial goals. Thank you. Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks so much, Robert. Has anybody questions for Robert?
My name is Nadja from Germany, and thank you for your presentation. I am currently finalizing my PhD on the topic of critical power analysis in the workplace. The world of work is characterized by neoliberal power. To what extent does client focus take into account the true paradigm of neurodiversity theory in your program? To me, it sounds as if your intervention corresponds to the entrepreneurial spirit in the sense of neoliberalism. In my research, I have found that many people do not want to conform to these structures of power and work because we cannot speak of equality here in principle, right? The United Nations is calling for structural change in this area as advocated by Nick Walker, among others, with regard to neurodiversity. I am only interested in how you reflect on this construct of the entrepreneurial spirit itself.
Can you be a little bit more specific on your question? Sorry, I apologize.
Oh, no, no problem. So your spirit and your program reminds me of the Berkling says entrepreneurial spirit itself. So it's characterized like the pathogenes paradigm, right? So you focus on the client as the problem to put in on the workplace, but we need, like the UN nations calling us a structural change, we need to reflect our own position in this workplace. So my question is, how do you reflect your own thinking of neoliberalism in your program? Because I don't saw this.
It's a good question. I suppose in terms of where the other person is coming from, is that what you're asking?
Yes, see, we all from this neoliberalism pathogenes paradigm, so we all need to reflect this and not only see the workplace and then make it the best. So I speak from a person who knows the workplace really good in Germany, and so.
Yeah, I suppose really it comes down to there's a lot of reflective practice in what we do, with regards to working with employers, working with the individual and ourselves as well. And we collect a lot of information ongoing, formally and informally, in relation to that. Because it's the main thing that we want to do is to create, like, it's great having labels in the world, but if we can remove a world of labels and make everything just automatic, where organizations and individuals can think for themselves and negotiate and navigate the world in that partnership, I think that's the ideal. That's where we need to go, if that makes any sense. And I think only if we deal with reflective practice and we create that conversation going with the organization, the individual, through learning and development, constant communication, I think we can get to that point. Because we look at a support reduction model across the board for the organization, for the individual, and the circles of support in the community for that individual. Because isn't that what we all want? To build up that level of autonomy and independence, where you have that ideal for that person. There's going to be challenges, but life is full of challenges. So you take the good with the bad, and that's why resilience is so important from an individual perspective. So I don't know whether that answers your question.
Thank you, Robert. We have just one more question just over there. Thank you.
Hello. Oh, it is. Hi, me again. Quick question, which is the same question I asked before. Is this service available to people who can't access the school leavers funding, or is it only through school leavers?
Good question, because when we developed this service, it was outside of the typical, let's just say, economic framework that the HSE had, okay, because they pulled away from employment. So we went to the Department of Social Protection and PUBL and the Dormant Account Fund to get funding for that, but that allowed us to have flexibility as well. So the majority of the individuals that are using our service come in through HSE referrals, but that isn't a precursor for them to be able to do what we do in terms of the working environment or the impact program, etc. So we do have a few people that are coming in that within our catchment area, that live in our catchment area, that want to avail of it, and we don't hold any barriers to that. The only caveat I can say is that we're only as good as the people that we have to support the individual, because in Gheel we pride ourselves on quality, not quantity. So if we have the manpower there to support outside of the funding, we will definitely do it, and we are doing it. I hope that answers your question. And if you want to talk to me afterwards, I'd be more than happy to. All right. Cheers.
Thank you very much. We have our last speaker now, Lars. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Up to me to fight the attention span and the hunger feeling while the lunch is ready, right? So hopefully I might make it interesting for you. Thank you for being here and attending this session. And I'm here to present I'm here as a PhD student, external PhD student. And my supportive team are the rest of the authors on the study, on the first slide. And it is about navigating career shocks in the context of higher education for autistic emerging adults. A mouthful, and I'm hopefully digesting these terms so that in the end you have a grasp of what it is actually about. Normally I start, because I tend to speak in career conferences, vocation, work conferences, and then I always have to explain these kind of things. But luckily in here, this is kind of a logic that this is the case how we do research. Yet I wanted to highlight the lived experience advisory panel I have, and they are advising me, they are correcting me, and they are making sense of the data I'm seeing, so I'm very grateful, and therefore this slide is here. That I want to highlight that I'm not doing this on my own. I'm having a very nice and friendly panel who's looking over my shoulder. Three concepts which I wanted to dive a little bit further into so that my study makes sense. School to work transition, sustainable careers and career shocks. So first, why is it even important to study the school to work transition? Well, in the Netherlands, around 2–3% of the total population is diagnosed with autism, and luckily we see in the Netherlands that also autistic graduates are successfully finishing their higher education, so that's a good thing. Yet we know that the school to work transition is already a very complex and uncertain transition, because there's, for instance, an identity change where first you were a student and then you're a young professional. Hey, expectation and assumptions are different. But also, hey, we don't exactly, as a graduate, you don't know exactly what you have to do to make, in the end, your transition successful. What is success in the end? And there's a lot of focus on the individual and expected from agency from the individual to cope and deal with that. And it might be even more complex or challenging for autistic graduates. And there you see here some extra barriers which we know from the literature, and the most well-known is this so-called service cliff. You have kind of support within this educational system, and then you transition into the labor market, but you're not into this organizational structure yet. So where lies the responsibility of, for instance, support or guidance? And this is called service cliff, and this is very well established in the literature. What we know, this school to work transition, the first steps towards sustainable employment are taking exactly at that moment. So it is kind of important that it is kind of a smooth transition into the labor market, but yet for higher education students, we know this is very unrepresented in the literature, And very often, if we look at these kind of studies, it is, and I think it aligns with the things we heard in here, is very much about having employment. But employment is so much bigger, and is employment the only thing that matters, or is there a more holistic perspective to it? And is having employment at one time actually what makes a transition successful? Well, kind of suggestion already, no, we think differently. And therefore we take a sustainable career perspective. 3 topics in the sustainable career perspectives are time, so events and experiences happening over time, and that makes a career. So time, longitudinal, is an important perspective of a career. Second, you have individual characteristics, motivations, aspirations. These matter for a person's career. So there is something, the career is yours, but it doesn't happen in a vacuum. Contextual factors, where does this career evolve, does matter and have an impact on your career. So there is an intersection between the individual and the contextual factors. So these 3 things matter, and hopefully you see this in our research model that we take that into account. And when is a career sustainable? And the indicators are formed by that in overall happiness, health, and well-being. And productivity. So there's, something there is in the job, there's value adding to a person, but also to the organization, but also the well-being, cognitive and physical, is important to have a sustainable career. Again, over time. In a complex model, you see on the right side the indicators, in the middle the person, on the top you see this social context spaces where this is occurring. And we will be focusing on time, change events. And then we conceptualize these as career shocks. So this is my last concept. A career shock is actually something which is happening on the outside of the individual. So this is this external effect. But it is causing a reflection within the person. So exactly this individual and contextual factors are intersecting there. And this reflection, it means something for my career or my career development or my career decisions. That is actually where a career shock is about. Let me give you 2 examples from stories I know from my practice. The first, Jeroen. Jeroen graduated from a technical university, and he was kind of anxious about this whole transition into work because he was scared it knocked him off his feet. So he chose for a special program within a big, large technical company within the region where he was promised support on the job, slow start, and a lot of learning opportunities and development opportunities and time. So his first day on the job, he entered the building. And apparently, the manager who hired him was interim, so that person was gone. They've kind of forgot about him, that he was there. So the first hour, he was walking around without a clear purpose. When they finally noticed him, he was placed into an online product launch, global product launch meeting. No clue what to do. He had no idea why he was there and what he had to take from that meeting. So this was kind of illustrative for the rest of his week. And he texted me at the end of this week, I cannot work. I want to quit. I want to go back to my voluntary job, which I did as a student, because that is my role. So that is kind of a negative career shock. On the other hand, Anne, she graduated from an ICT education, and she entered within a big, large consultancy firm. And over there you have these big onboarding programs, and she didn't disclose her autism diagnosis. And when she was in this onboarding program, one of the talks was from a senior manager, and he gave this talk about this neurodiversity movement he was starting in this company, and he was raising awareness, he was sharing his neurodivergence, And this person was really open and inclusive about that. And Anne stepped over her anxiety to disclose her autism. And after the talk, she went to that manager. And that manager was really enthusiastic about it. Can you join our community? And is it something for you to share your ideas, share your experiences within our company so that we raise awareness for inclusivity? And suddenly, she is now moving in this company with the senior manager and talking about inclusive work environments. So, two opposite examples of career shock. So they can be positive and negative. Why is it important to, and I'm looking at the time, so I will go a little bit faster into that. Why is it important to study career shocks? Well, first, I said it is an intersection between the person and the context, and exactly there is where challenges arise in work context because autistic employees have to navigate these non-autistic working environments. I think that is a kind of clear thing. Very recent, a study about career development of autistic adults showed that personal and external events are pivotal in career development. So apparently they matter. They have an impact on initial career trajectories, and if we want to inform individual strategies or support, we need to take these into consideration. So, two research questions: what kind of career shocks do we have? And how do they relate to this in this sustainable career model? It's part of a larger study, as my PhD project. We're following students when they're graduating and entering the labor market over time, and we're following around 100. They're not consistent in every wave, but around 100 autistic graduates. So what we found is 93% of them experienced a career shock over 2 years. So apparently, they're there. And the number is exactly the same between positive and negative career experiences. They're different people, I checked for that, but also 84% are experienced negative or positive shocks, and sometimes both. So apparently they're there. Well, what kind of shocks, because this is what we asked them, what kind of shocks do we see? And the positive shocks, you see career opportunities, like I said with Anne, as the example, recognition and validation in the workplace, and perceived support and inclusion. That is the positive side. On the negative side, you saw career setbacks. We just talked about hiring and selection procedures. That's one of them. Health and well-being, misfit, discrimination, life events, and job strain. So that's stress without control. And I compared that a little bit with the non-autistic literature around career shocks. And the positive shocks are kind of similar, but what you see in the negative shocks is especially this misfit, discrimination, and job strain are kind of unique. You don't see them in the other literature around career shocks. So apparently, autistic graduates also experience other kind of shocks. We also have this complex model, and I hope you recognize it. On the one hand, we have these things called career shocks, and on the right hand, we have these happy, healthy, and productive outcomes, and this moderating effect. And this is very recently, so last week I ran the analysis, so they're not completely in the robustness of the model. We have some checks to do, so don't pin me fully down on the numbers yet, but this is what we found in the model. And what you see is that especially on stress levels, these things matter. The moderation effect wasn't indirectly significant, but there's a direct relation to stress in career shocks. And what we found is a moderation effect between career shocks and happiness. So apparently if you have more resilient attitude, positive shocks enhance your feeling of happiness. Last slide, if my clicker works. Not yet. Not yet. I'm out of time, I see as well. It doesn't go. Can somebody support me? I think it's lunch, right? Oh, there it is. Well, I think this makes now kind of sense. Career shocks are common. It might be that different groups, in this case autistic groups, experience different kind of career shocks during the school to work transition. Negative career shocks are dealing with higher levels of stress, vice versa with positive shocks. And resilience can have buffering effects. We don't know yet exactly how it works. Like I said, we're not delved really deep into the model yet. But I think this dynamic interaction between individual and context over time is important, one, in our research, but also in our guidance. And that was my main message. Thank you.